And welcome to our webinar on how to become a freelance writer. It is a great additional avenue to monetize your blog and your content creation. You can just be a freelance writer full-time, as we are about to find out with our speaker today. And also, if you do have an outlet, your own blog, it's a great way to establish your authority on a subject when you write in other outlets. So my name is Paola Mendez, and I am the founder of the Blogger Union. And for those of you who are not familiar with the Blogger Union, we are a network of blogger communities dedicated to growing our members' brands and incomes through meetups, workshops, and brand collaborations. If you would like to become a member, all you have to do is go to thebloggerunion.com and register. It's free. And you'll receive email notifications for upcoming events, educational webinars just like this one, and brand collabs. And if you'd like to follow my blog, you can check out Coral Gables Love. Our speaker today is Amber Love Bond. She has written for all kinds of publications. She writes for Forbes. She just was part of the Four Doors book published recently. And we are really excited to hear about all of her insights about being a freelance writer. Welcome, Amber.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me. I'm excited to share the knowledge that I've gathered over the last 6 years of being a full-time freelancer.
We are all so excited to hear everything that you have to share with us. Before we get started, would you like to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. My name is Amber, and I am a Miami-based freelance writer. So I typically cover food, beverage, and travel. I'm doing a little bit of lifestyle these days, and I'm trying to branch out into tech and wellness as well. I actually started freelancing full-time 6 years ago. I started writing about 7 years ago. Before that, I had a 12-year career in corporate finance, and writing was kind of an accident. But the happiest accident I've ever experienced.
That is amazing. So can you share a couple of the outlets that you write for and on a regular basis?
Yes, so I write for, as you mentioned, Forbes. I just wrote a large chunk of the Folders Travel Guide for South Florida. I write for Eater, Time Out, Thrillist, Huffington Post, Tasting Panel Magazine, Open Table, American Way, which is the in-flight on American Airlines. There's probably a few more, but it's definitely over a dozen different publications, both online and in print.
That is amazing. I'm sure there are a bunch of us.
I write for Miami New Times.
Oh, there you go. There are a bunch of us here today who have those outlets in our to-do list of like, we would like to be published in those outlets. So that is amazing. So Amber, how did you get started with freelance writing?
So as I mentioned, I had a background in corporate finance. I was happy with my job. I was satisfied with my job. I wasn't like thrilled with it, but I knew I wasn't happy with my social life, and I was painfully shy. So in order to have a more fun social life, I forced myself out of my comfort zone. And actually started Art Basel about 7 years ago. So 7 years this December. I forced myself to go to as many free events as I possibly could because I knew networking was the best way to make new friends. And I got lucky. One of the events, I actually met somebody who owned a blog in Miami, and I had already been following her. I had no idea. It was Miami Bites, for those who are in Miami. It's Ellen. And we connected, and a few weeks later, she was looking for writers. So I, in addition to finance, also have a baking business. I don't do it as much anymore because I travel a lot, but I was doing custom cakes. And so because I had that knowledge, I felt comfortable enough writing about desserts because I knew what it takes to make a good dessert. So I wrote an article on the best desserts in Miami, and it actually performed better than anything had ever done on her blog. She had about 9 contributors at the time. So she gave me my own column called Saturday Sweets. I was doing it for free for probably the first 4 or 5 months. And then I negotiated with her and she started paying me, not a lot, but she was paying me. And in that time, I was working full time, going out to events and openings, coming home writing articles, making cakes till 3 a.m. And I was definitely on the verge of burnout, but I was finally really happy with a social life that I had garnered for myself. And that's when I believe Eater and a couple other outlets started to approach me saying like, hey, we're looking for freelancers. You seem great. So I took on everything. I did a lot of saying yes, which now I've learned it's okay to say no. But I said yes for a while and then realized I needed to get rid of something to give myself a little more time. And it just so happened that my corporate job was what I chose to get rid of. I was probably not completely ready, but I was determined, and I made it work. And here we are. My 6-year anniversary of being completely freelance is this November.
Oh my God, Amber, that is such a crazy story.
And I'm also successful in finding lots of new fun friends that had the same ideas I had and wanted to go out and do fun things and experience all that Miami has to offer.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that you made friends along the way that are also freelance writers and who like to go out and share things that around town. How has that been important for you in your career as a freelance writer?
I love to preach about the importance of networking. You never know who's going to be working on what later, or what angles you can get as far as stories. It's nice to know everyone from, I write about food. So it's very important to me when I walk into a restaurant, if I'm eating by myself, I love sitting at the bar, even if I'm not by myself, but you sit at the bar and you can really learn a lot about what's going on. And then so I write about cocktails a lot. So I sit at a bar and I get to know a bartender and I network with them and I write about whatever they're working on. Then they're always keeping me in mind for like, maybe they go in 3 years and they open their own bar and now they're going to give me that story or that exclusive because they've seen how supportive I've been along the way. And that works with anything. That's with publicists, with other writers. You never know what writer's going to become an editor to an outlet that you really want to be part of. With chefs in the food world, with hotel owners, with travel agencies, networking and really like finding a personal connection, I think is really important to not only having better friends, but also succeeding in your career, because you never know who can help you or how you can help someone in return.
So it's so important, that last little part that you added at the end, how you can also
Yeah.
help back.
Yeah, absolutely. That's just as important.
Absolutely. All right, so let's start where everyone is very curious about. And let's start with, how do you pitch a story to an outlet?
So every outlet's different. Every outlet has a different voice. So a lot of the outlets that I write for, they want me to kind of mirror their voice. And then there's a bunch that want me to have my own voice and my own. And when I say voice, I don't mean like I have to believe in their ideals. It's more of a style thing. So what you want to do is you want to figure out within that outlet, do they have a specific style where like all the writers sound a little different, but you can tell that there's a pattern to the way they write? Or do they really want to hear very specific individual voices? So then you're going to, once you figure that out and you find a story that they haven't covered, but is very similar, you can see that they would vibe together. You want to find an angle that you can provide that maybe they can't get on their own. Whether it's you went on a trip and you met this like really cool housekeeper that's been there for 60 years and she knows every guest by name every time they come, or there's a fun yoga retreat that somebody's doing with a really cool ceremony. You want to find an angle that the editor you're pitching doesn't know about, because you want to be an asset to them. But you also want to make it fit. So you need to make it either within their voice or your voice based on, as I said, the outlet. And then you just find them and you send that email, and that's probably the scariest part. And I will say that in cold pitches, every 20 pitches I send out, I get maybe 4 answers and maybe 1 to 2 yeses. So the odds are they're tough. They're definitely tough, and you have to develop thick skin. But I've also found where just last week, I got someone who came back to me from a pitch I gave them last July. They were like, hey, it didn't work, but summer's coming up again. are you still interested in doing the story? So you never know. And if your pitch is memorable or something interesting, they do hopefully keep it in mind.
Oh, wow, that's amazing that a year-old pitch it's actually still hanging on in there.
It's very surprising.
Oh, that's good not to definitely not giving up on your pitches.
And that's for a new outlet that I've never written before too. That was a complete cold pitch that I found on Twitter. So searching on Twitter, #pitchme, I found to be really good for my cold pitching, because a lot of times editors will go on Twitter and they will say, hey, I'm looking for writers to cover this. And they'll put in different talking points with their direct email. And that's a lot easier than stalking them on LinkedIn.
Oh, that is a great tip.
Which is also another option.
So now that you mentioned that tip of how to find editors who are interested in getting pitches, do you have any other suggestions other than Twitter?
Yes, so Twitter's great. I also subscribe to Freedom with Writing. It's a newsletter. You can put in different preferences of the type of writing that you're doing. But they send probably 3 to 4 newsletters a week, and they're all different. So they'll be like, here's 35 calls for pitches that editors are looking for. And they're very broad in range. Like there's food, there's tech, there's pride things, there's just all sorts of stuff. And it's really great to have all of that in one place. So Freedom with Writing. Hubstaff Talent also has a lot of writing and copywriting. And then I'm in a lot of the Facebook groups, the binders, the travel binders, the Facebook czars, Facebook writers and editors. Those groups are really great for sourcing news stories and also sourcing content for them.
Oh, great. Because there are publicists in those Facebook groups. And you've mentioned publicists before, but could you explain to us why is it important to develop relationships with publicists? And how does that work with freelance writers?
So writers and publicists work hand in hand a lot, and we kind of need each other the same amount equally. Not everyone has a publicist, but those that do have a publicist tend to be a little bit more media trained and available to give you the information you need. So say you're writing a story about best summer dishes and tips and tricks from really great chefs. Going to a chef is really great, but they're super busy and they're probably all over the place. The publicist knows how to get an answer out of them, knows their hours, has meetings with them, and they tend to be able to get you the information much quicker. And they also most publicists have a plethora of clients, so they can help you with different sources and finding things kind of all at once. And they also provide much better pictures than like chef's cell phone photos or whatever. They have access to the high-res images, which are just as important as the writing. So,
absolutely, the image assets. So Vanessa asked a clarification. If you could please mention again the name of the Facebook group for travelers.
Yes, so it's I'm gonna need to look at it and get back to you, but it's Travel Writers and Binders, I believe.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. And if you guys have any questions along the way, feel free to add them to the chat. Once we're done with the conversation, we'll have an open Q&A. We'll take all of your questions, and I'll make sure to scroll all the way back so that we don't miss any of your questions. Okay, wonderful. So we were talking still about pitching, and I was thinking, would it be possible for you to kind of walk us through what that email you're sending to the editor looks like? What do you exactly put in that email?
Yes. So as you can imagine, editors are getting a ton of emails, so you want to be quick and to the point. I try to keep it maybe 4 sentences max. So it's usually, hi, I'm Amber, I'm a Miami-based freelancer. I cover XYZ. These are outlets I write for. And then it's just a quick, I think this would be a really great story for your site, like 2 sentences on the best whatevers. Here's the sources that I have access to. Here's what I can provide you. And then I always include a link to my muck rack. If you guys don't have a muck rack, I definitely suggest filling one out. It's a website that for writers is free, and it's basically a portfolio. So you can put in what you're covering, what kind of things you're writing, your preferences, whether you like to be emailed, called, text messaged, if you'd rather emails on Monday mornings. They don't necessarily follow all of those guidelines and you put them in there, but you can put your preference. You can answer like fun trivia questions, like what's your favorite book and things so that they can get to know you. But what's also great is you can pin articles that you've done at the top. That's your portfolio, like things you're really proud of. But then it also auto generates your byline from anywhere on the internet. So it will automatically pool things as you publish them for you so that there's like a live update of what you've been working on. So I always send that because that gives them a quick screenshot of who I am as a writer, who I write for, and what I've done recently. So I include that link. And then thanks so much. Looking forward to hearing from you. Quick, simple. You don't want to take up too much time. You don't need a whole like cover letter situation and long novel. You want it to be quick, to the point. And if they want more information, they will get back to you.
Thank you so much. I think that's going to be so useful. Sometimes we get all wrapped up in our head of like, I don't know, it's what I'm going to write. You tell them your whole life story in the email.
Yeah, no, you don't want to, you want to make it as quick as possible. It's, Corinne, it's called Muck Rack. Muck. Here we go.
Perfect. Yes.
Yeah.
Muck Rack. There you go. Thank you, Amber.
Really, really great. A lot of publicists also use that to find writers to pitch. So in addition to like, yes, I pitch outlets and things and I'll do my own research, but I also get roughly, I'd say on an average day, 300 emails from publicists with their products, their clients, their destinations and different things. And just like I want to send emails that are short and simple, I also appreciate short and simple and to the point emails from publicists. But Muck Rack is a great way to be seen by publicists and have other outlets or even editors reach out and pitch you and find you.
That's wonderful. Now that you mentioned that you get 300 pitches from PR agents or representatives, how do you take those and work with an outlet? Like, do you find something that someone like a hotel that you're really interested in, you're like, oh, this is like really exciting, and then you turn around and add that to a pitch you're going to send to an outlet?
Yes.
Or
so like a great example is recently someone pitched me that their hotel is doing something for sea turtle season. So they're doing this like really cool summer camp. So if you're staying at the hotel, your kids have access to all these really cool lessons and they get to do things. And I remembered in an email that I got 6 months ago that another hotel was doing like a special rum that money goes to the sea turtles. So there I'm like, okay, great. It's sea turtle season from May to October. Here's 2 places doing something. I'm sure I can find more. So I turned that into a pitch to one of my editors that I work with on travel things. So it wasn't a cold pitch. It was an editor I know. That I've created a really good foundation and I've been writing for them for 3 years. So it was a quick, like I copy pasted parts of those emails and said, hey, is this something you're interested in? I'm sure I could find 3 to 4 more. So I just sent that pitch on Friday. So I'm not bugging her yet about it. But if she comes back to me and she greenlights it, then my next step to write that article is I will probably go to one of the Facebook groups or other publicists that I know and say, hey, do you have any clients doing cool things with sea turtle season? And that turns into an article. So I've sourced it from different areas. And it was basically that idea came up in my inbox when I saw a connection between the two.
That is really cool how you turned that around.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, oh, I don't want to bug her yet. What is a good time to wait to when you want to follow up on a pitch to an outlet?
That's always tough. So like with this one where I have the relationship, it's an editor I work with a lot. I would probably wait. So this was a long weekend. It's, a little different. So I will probably email her on Wednesday. So normally I'd probably do it on Tuesday if it wasn't a long weekend. An editor that I don't know that I'm fully cold pitching, I usually wait about 10 days. Just because there's a chance that they've either looked at it and they're not interested and they don't reply to emails, which is a thing. They've looked at it and they're looking to see if there's a fit for it, or they were rushing and they looked at it and they maybe meant to get back to me and they didn't. But I like to give them that full window just in case. I also with that, so like I mentioned, a lot of people don't reply. Even with my 300 emails, will make it a point to reply to every email. I think this is really important as a writer, to reply to every email, even if I can't use it, saying, thanks so much, I'm keeping it in mind, or I'll keep it in mind for upcoming editorial, or like I pull out one thing that I really loved from it and be like, this is amazing. Like I keep it authentic and simple, but I always reply to everything, even if it's a thank you, I don't have a fit right now, because they're on the other side wondering, how soon do I get to follow up with you? And then if you have a million follow-ups, like if I can't use it and I don't reply to you, you're going to follow up with me. And now you've doubled my inbox. And now it makes my day harder to work through. So in order to keep efficiency in my inbox, because I don't have all day to answer emails, I like to reply so that they know I got it and they're not constantly following up. Because I've got to have time to write too. I can't just read emails all day.
That is a perfect segue to a question that Yasalit is asking in the chat. And she's asking, how do you stay motivated and not have writer's block?
That's a good one. Writer's block definitely happens. The one thing with freelancing that before anybody goes full-time freelance, you need to make sure you're super disciplined and you will actually carve out the time to write. Writer's block does happen for me. I have found in more recent years that it's okay to have writer's block. And so I try not to get really down and hard on myself when it happens. I get up, I'll go for a walk, I'll sit on my balcony and take in the fresh air, I'll read a chapter of a book, I'll try and meditate. I won't just sit at the computer and stare and be like, oh my God, what's wrong with me? Why can't I do this? I will get up and remove myself completely from the situation, whether it's for 30 minutes, an hour, or a full day. Like maybe I can't work on that article and I'll go back to emails or copywriting or different things, but I won't sit there and dwell on it. And when staying motivated, kind of knowing that if I don't get work done, I don't make money is a pretty big motivating factor. And I also try to write about things that I actually really love. It's easy to stay motivated when you're really passionate about the beat that you're writing about. With that being said, I also do a lot of corporate copywriting and stuff. And so I find those jobs in kind of the same way I find freelance articles. And those aren't always my favorite. But again, the payday makes it worth it. And being able to be a freelancer. So like right now I'm talking to you guys in Denver because I decided I wanted to go to a concert in Denver this week. So I booked a ticket and came to Denver knowing that I can do all of my work and get everything done. But I'm a freelancer, so I can do it from anywhere.
That flexibility sounds amazing. So we were talking about writer's block, and I think something that a lot of freelance writers are curious about is how do you come up with ideas for your articles?
Lots of different ways. So it'll be either something like the sea turtle thing that I shared, or I'll taste something or be somewhere or see something that I'm so excited about on a personal level that I feel like there's got to be other people that want to be this excited about it, and this needs to be a story. So a lot of mine comes through passion, or I'll meet a chef with like a crazy background of they like overcame something really big, or they're doing something really different that nobody's doing. So a lot of my inspiration comes from just day-to-day things that I'm seeing and living. And just it's all about, I want to support and I want to tell people stories. So it's what stories do I want to read? What stories do I want to hear about? Who do I want to learn more about? And that's where I get a lot of it. Or trends. So like right now it's beginning of summer, right? So people want ice cream, people want frozen drinks, people want vacations. I do a lot of like once a month, I'll go, usually around the beginning of the month, I'll go and I'll look up those like ridiculous hashtag holidays on social media because they're trendy and it gives you ideas. So I'll go through and like, I know July is ice cream month. I know August is bourbon month. I know May was mental health month, things like that. And I try and find angles around those things because those are what's being searched on Google. They're what's being posted on social media, and you want to stay relevant and for the most part trendy when you're writing pieces like that. You want to give people what they want to read.
Those are all great ideas. Thank you for sharing, Amber. Okay, now let's say you wrote your story and it has been published. What do you do next?
Okay, so I share the link to the article with anyone who helped me, whether it's an expert commentator, a publicist, a chef, a hotel, anyone who helped me, anyone who gave me any kind of information, I will send them the link and say, thank you so much. It was great working for you. We're working on this with you. Keep me in mind for, if it's a publicist, like future pitches. If it's a chef, like let me know what your next fun thing is. Different things like that. But I always thank them. And then I also will post it on my own social media channels. So Facebook, I post a lot of article links. I find that I get good readership there. And then Instagram, I tend to post it in my stories. And then I'll add a link in my profile. I use Milkshake, which is similar to Linktree, and you can have unlimited links. I like it a lot. You can personalize it and make it cool. So it's like a mini portfolio on my social media. I found that one, that gives whoever's being talked about in the article, it gives them some social exposure, which is really great. And then that also puts more eyes on me of like, one, my readers love to read it, right? So like they like to know what I'm up to. My followers like to see what I've been working on, or they'll see I Instagram storied something and then a week later, now there's the link to the story. And so it's like they were part of that journey for me, which is really cool. It's important to have kind of a brand as a freelancer. It's not important. It helps a lot. And I think that that's definitely gotten me a lot of the connections that I've made. And so with the connections, like I'm posting about a couple weeks ago, I did a story on like 15 boozy beverages you should check out this spring. And I posted that. And then all of a sudden I'm getting tons of emails like, hey, I have a client doing this, or I just founded this beverage, or different things. And so now I'm getting all these pitches. That's perfect, because now I can get a series. Now it can be summer beverages you need to try. And then that can be kind of a thing, which is cool, and keeps it on trend, but it also keeps fresh material coming into my inbox to inspire me for my next stories.
That is great. That's good to know that you go through that effort afterwards to make sure to let everyone who was involved in the story know that it was published and that they can read their article there. That's a great tip, Amber. So now let's talk about money. You get paid for all of your freelance work.
So most of the outlets that I write for come with set budgets per piece. So I will typically, so I do a lot of pitching, but a lot of times, because of different relationships I have with the 15 or so outlets that I work for, my editors will come to me and say, hey, we'd like you to write this story. And they'll give me a headline and a blurb. And then this is what we can pay you. This is the due date. Yes or no. So a lot of times it's just a set fee. There are other outlets that I write for that I get like a monthly stipend, and I'm expected to write 5 pieces a month. Then there are other outlets that's just kind of known, like, this is what we pay per article. Freelance writing does not pay a ton of money. But the more you do it and the more outlets you become involved in, the paydays do get bigger. Print pays significantly more, which is really great. And those are the ones that once you make a relationship, you tend to get more opportunities with them. It's easier to pitch them. As you can imagine, editors that you have a relationship are going to take your pitch over a cold pitch, typically, unless it is the cold pitch is that amazing story that no one else has that we were talking about before. So it's really all in the relationships, and do not be hard on yourself if you're not making a ton. This is my 6th year as a freelancer, and it's the first time I'm making more than I made in the corporate world. So
that's amazing, though.
But yes, this year I will make more than I made in the corporate world, and that's really freaking exciting.
That congratulations, Amber. I'm so happy to hear that. That is really cool. And but also, you were telling me the other day that you do the writing for these outlets that have set prices, but then you also complement your income with what you were mentioning before, which is copywriting for other outlets and stuff like that. And when something like that comes along, you mentioned that you have a rate sheet.
Yes. So in order to supplement my writing income, or my like article writing income, I do a lot of copywriting for corporate clients. So I'll do blogs or newsletters. I'll write the bios for executives of companies. I'll create the storyline for different brands. So for those, it's a pretty basic rate sheet where I will either say, here's my hourly rate. This is what I do. Here's like a one-off, like you need a press release written. Here's what I charge per press release. Here's what I charge per bio with 1 or 2 edits, whatever you're comfortable with. So I've just created a rate sheet with what makes sense to me. My rates in the last 2 years have probably tripled from when I started writing, but it's because I feel more comfortable. I have a wider portfolio selection, and my corporate copywriting is everything from like attorneys to liquor brands to I've done some like copy for different hotels, or I did one for a consulting firm. I've done for like random little products. So having a rate sheet and believing in yourself. You can say no if somebody comes at you with an offer you don't like, because sometimes your time is more valuable than the money that you don't feel is enough for what you deserve. So it's definitely something that's flexible. It's never set in stone. There are certain things where I'm very passionate about it, or it's a startup that I really believe in, and so maybe I'll lower my rates for them. Or it's someone that like I know it's going to be a long-term thing. So if you're going to pay me for the next 2 years to do a blog for you for a month, maybe I'll do it I'll go at a lower rate because I know it's going to be constant income for the next 2 years, something like that. So I try and be flexible, but I also try and make sure that I know what I'm worth, and I keep that at the forefront, because at the end of the day, you are your own boss, and you take on what will pay the bills, which is important, but also things that you're happy with and you're proud of, and that you want to see your name on. Or a lot of these things are ghostwritten, but it's still nice to know, like, I did that, I'm proud of that, and I didn't get taken advantage of along the way.
I love that. Definitely. We have to know our worth and value our time, because time is a finite resource for us. So that is great advice, Amber. Do you have any tips for us to improve our writing? Do you feel like your writing has improved over time since you started this journey?
Yes, I think it has. I don't know that there's any specific way to get there. I will say though that I think that with all the outlets I work with a lot of different editors, and I've learned more from the editors that are willing to like really red pen my work than the ones that are like, oh, this is great, thank you. And they'll just like change little things here and there. And when you read it, it's not much of a different story. But I've had a few editors that will come back and be like, change this, why this, expand on this, use more creativity here. And I think that that's been really helpful. I have never taken it personally when an editor comes back and wants like crazy hardcore edits, because I look at that as this is what's going to make me a better writer. And it's nice to have somebody else who's in a higher position and has been doing this, longer potentially, and has this experience to kind of give me their insight into what would make my story better. So I definitely take constructive criticism for my writing really well, and I don't let it hurt me. I just let it make me better. And I do a lot of reading. I read a ton. I also read like outlets that are on my bucket list and my goal list. I will sit and I'll read through and be like, okay, what's this writer doing that I can level up on, so that I become, so that I can be at that level to pitch that outlet. There's a lot of certain outlets that I've like worked up to where I'm like, I want to pitch them, but I don't think I'm ready. So I just sit and I read. I probably spend 3 hours a day going through different websites and things, just kind of researching who else is out there writing and different styles and like how they're describing things. And then also just researching kind of who to pitch and what to pitch and who's doing what stories. So reading a lot helps.
Reading a lot. Yeah. Okay, wonderful. So there is this fun perk of being a freelance writer, and those are press trips. Can you tell us about that and how often they happen for you, and how do you get invited, and do you get paid for that? Pretty much anything you want to share about that.
So press trips are they're definitely the biggest perk of being a travel writer. Typically, those come from either whoever's doing the marketing or the PR for the hotel or the destination or a specific restaurant. And they will reach out to me and say, hi, we're either hosting a FAM trip, which is a familiarizational trip. So those tend to have several different writers from kind of all over the country or the world, depending on where it is. And they will come up with a full itinerary. Press trips are usually 3 to 4 days for anything within like national. The international trips tend to be 7 days to 10 days. They can of course be longer or shorter, but they'll come to me with an itinerary and they'll say, here's what this destination or this hotel is doing. We'd love for you to cover it. Here's the kind of activities we'll have for you. And then a lot of times they will want a guaranteed assignment, which is hard as a freelancer. And for those, I would go to the editors I work closest with and say, is this something we think we could actually do? And then sometimes they don't need a guaranteed assignment because they know freelancing is really hard. So you'll just kind of spitball back and forth with them. Like, I could cover it here and we could do this angle. I could try and cover it here. We could do this angle. But then for me, I kind of need to experience what it is before I can guarantee that I'm going to even pitch it. Like, I need to know, is this worth writing about? And then from there, they will ask for all your personal information and they'll book the flight for you. And you typically just have to worry about getting yourself to the airport and they handle everything else. So they'll pick you up from the airport. They'll handle all of your meals. If it's a hotel, a lot of times they'll have you do everything on site. And then like maybe they'll book things with other partners close by so you can kind of act like you are on that vacation. It's not nearly as relaxing as a wonderful vacation in the tropics. There's a lot of movement. Because they want to fit in as much as possible in those 4 days. So I've done press trips where I did 4 days in wine country and I went to 42 wineries. So you have to be really good at keeping your details organized, because then you're going to come home and try and write that story about the wine and like, what did I remember? What did I do? Who had what? So I take a lot of notes in my phone. And so that's like a FAM trip, is when they have lots of writers at once. And then you'll have individual trips where they'll come to you kind of with the same thing, but you'll select dates that you want to go. Typically you can bring a +1, which is really cool. They will have the +1 pay for their own airfare. But then everything else is kind of just like you and a friend or a partner or whatever get to go experience. Those itineraries tend to be slightly more lenient, so you can actually like experience pool time and do things like that. But either way, there's an itinerary and you just show up and follow what they say. Some places they'll make it more personalized. So like they'll say, okay, are you the person that wants to lay in a cabana? Are you the one that wants to go paddleboarding? Are you the one that wants to do yoga? Or do you want to go shopping? Like they'll ask you kind of like what your preference is based on personal preference, and then also the angle you're writing for. Like if you're a wellness writer, you're probably going to do the morning yoga class. If you're writing about fashion, you're probably going to go check out the local stores, things like that. So you do not get paid to go on the trip. They're not paying you to come. They're providing you with all of the experience. So you're typically like, you can, you tip the hotel staff if you want to, and things like that. The way you get paid for that is by selling the article to an outlet. So a lot of times I have definitely been paid like $100 for an article, but then on the other side, I got to go spend 4 days at a hotel that is way out of my budget and doing a lot of cool things. So for those things where I say, knowing your worth, like, okay, maybe it wasn't a really expensive article, but I got to go have this experience that I probably wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. So it's a nice trade-off for the lower paying articles.
Thank you for sharing all about press trips. I know lots of our members are curious about those.
3 of them this month.
Oh my gosh. You are a total jet setter now. So,
I am. It's fun.
so this is the last question, you guys. So we're gonna switch to Q&A after this question. So if you have any questions, make sure you start adding them to the chat so that we can start answering your questions. So I wanted to end with, how do you find that balance between being a freelance writer and your, not getting burnt out from taking too many jobs and paying your bills?
So that one definitely took me probably longer than anything else to figure out. And I've had to learn patience with myself. And so I was always very disciplined. Like even as a freelancer, I wake up at 7 a.m. I'm probably on my computer by 8:30. And then I'll work through, I tend to be on the computer until like 3 or 4. And then still figuring it out now post-COVID, but previously before COVID, by like 4 o'clock, I would leave my house and go do interviews. I'd interview chefs or do anything I needed to do in person. And then I would typically be like at a dinner, and then I'll go home and I'll write notes and then wake up and do it all over again. But I've also found that that was an easy way to burn out because I was constantly pushing myself. Personally, I know I do best in front of the computer. I get my best writing done between 8 in the morning and like 1 in the afternoon. After that, I tend to get a little ADD and all over the place, and I want to get up and I want to do things. So I have Post-its everywhere. That keeps me very organized. And so I will start with like the most pressing things and then kind of leave for later in the day the things I'm really, really excited about and passionate, because that tends to flow out easily, even if I'm kind of bored of being in front of the computer. And I have made it okay to take breaks. Like maybe there's a day that I wake up and my head is killing me and I just can't look at a screen right away. Then I get on my computer at noon. I don't force myself. And like when we said with the writer's block, I get up and I take a walk. But then there's always that thought of, if I don't get the writing done, I don't get the paycheck. I can't invoice them. And that's definitely helpful. I also have found having a dedicated workspace. So I moved recently and now I have an office, and that has helped tremendously because I'm able to get up, and if I'm not in my office, I'm not at work. But if I'm in my office, I need to be working. And I tend to spend probably 8 or 9 hours in my office on a day where I'm not doing other things. So it's just kind of having like a space. Like my brain knows if I'm sitting in my office chair, it's time to get work done. And so it's that balance. It's also was tough as a food, beverage, and travel writer. So like that blur between what's fun and social and what's work has always been tough, because I am very much the one that like, I have major FOMO. I don't want people having fun without me. I want to be there forever. So I had to kind of learn like, okay, it's okay to not be the last person to leave. You can go home and you can take a nap. Sleeping is okay. But it's a lot of to-do lists. The fact that I like to be on the computer early in the morning is really helpful. And not being mad at myself when I can't get the words out, because eventually I will become super inspired and I'll sit and I'll write a million things. I'll have days where I get 4 stories done by noon, and then days where I can only make it through like half a story, but I'm still on top of my emails and I still pitch to people. So that to me is a really productive day. So as long as you're just constantly working on your craft, I think that's really helpful. But take time for yourself too.
Thank you for sharing that. And I feel that piece of advice of being kind with yourself is key, right?
Yes.
To get that balance. So thank you so much for sharing all of that information. We have some questions from the audience. And Yaselit is asking, do you send pictures and videos with your writing when you pitch your story?
I do not. I will sometimes note, like if I'm pitching about a restaurant thing or something, I'll say like, I have the sources to be able to provide high-res images. I don't typically send them. I do provide a lot of the images for my stories when I turn them in. Typically editors, once you've said like, yes, we're going to work this, here's the due date, they will say, we'd like 5 photos, horizontal, whatever size. And so I will source the photos. I think I source the photos for, I'd say like 80% of my things. Most of the print stuff, their art department will handle that. I just have to provide a contact and they'll directly reach out to them. But I don't typically send them with the pitch.
Okay, wonderful. Alec is asking, what about a content calendar? Do you keep one?
I always have an actual it's in front of me at all times, and my Post-its. I have tons of Post-its. So like I have a Post-it here with the 6 stories that I'm working on this week. I have tried having a content calendar, and that I don't keep up with it. I'll fall behind on it. But I find Post-its really work for me. So I'll write a Post-it, and then once I've like crossed off half of what's on there, then I tend to start a new Post-it with what's left and then what becomes new. And then I handwrite my calendar out like this. And I have a big one on my desk that has notes too. So I do better writing things down than I do having it on my computer. So I don't use my computer calendar as often. I like to handwrite it because I think once I write it, it really sticks in my head. So yes, Post-its. Post-its are how I survive.
Post-its is your strategy. I love it. Stacy is asking, she's saying, I'm new to freelance writing. Where is the first place to start?
Find something you're passionate about writing about and see who publishes stories similar, and look for an in there, like an editor. You can find them. I find a lot of editors on Twitter, on LinkedIn, or a lot of times the websites will have like a contact us. I try and find an email that's better than like media or press at whatever. You want to find like an actual name of someone, and just get your ideas into their inbox. And don't be sad if they're not all answered. Like I mentioned before, very few are actually answered, but once you're in with someone, you tend to be able to do more things with them. So I have I'd say I write for 18 different outlets, and there's probably 6 of them that I'm in constant communication with the editors. And then another like 4 of them that I'm just like on monthly rotation of like, I'm guaranteed stories. And then everything else is kind of like a one-off, but I know I have that opening. And so that list is very long.
That is amazing. Thank you so much, Amber, for coming here and sharing all of your insights with us. I think that was our last question. So we are so grateful that you took the time and that you shared your story and all of your insights about being a freelance writer.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me.
So thank you all of you guys for joining us as well and being such an active and engaged audience. We have other webinars in our calendar. I'm sharing the link to our calendar. It's thebloggerunion.eventbrite.com. Next week, we're going to be learning about how to get more saves and more traffic from Pinterest. After that, and following week, we're going to learn about how to get started with TikTok and grow your TikTok from someone who grew their TikTok to, I think, 100,000 in like a couple of weeks or something like that. So make sure you join us for future webinars. If you're watching the replay on YouTube, make sure you subscribe so that you get notified when we upload another webinar replay. And thanks again, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the week, and I'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.